All right, welcome to U.S. Notes 5.10. These are going to be about Carter's presidency. So he's the one who takes over after Ford. So Carter is our president. He wins the election in 1976, and that's the next presidency we'll look at. So 1976, Carter becomes president, runs against President Ford. He promises to restore honesty and morality to the federal government. And after Nixon and Ford and that whole distrust of government throughout the Vietnam War and all of the problems that had happened in government, people really liked this. And so they vote for Jimmy Carter because he's a good guy, he's a nice guy, he's not part of Washington, D.C. They trust him. So they're disillusioned after Vietnam and Watergate, and they want him in, they trust him. It's not a huge margin that he wins by, but people are ready for a change. So Carter really has two big domestic issues to look at and two big areas of foreign policy issues to look at. So we'll start with his domestic issues. The first we'll talk about is the economy. So the economy becomes a big deal. So Carter has two goals in the economy: end the recession, reduce unemployment. So these kind of go hand in hand. So recession is kind of that downward spiral. See how that goes? So the economy is going down, it's going backwards, and we have a high unemployment rate in the 1970s. So Carter comes in with the plan. He's going to cut taxes and increase government spending. And he says, so if the government's spending more to help the people, that will work. Also, we'll have the people pay less in taxes. People will have more money. That will fix the recession. Now, these two things don't necessarily go hand in hand, because if you cut taxes and increase government spending, you increase the deficit. But that ends up not even being the issue, because inflation surges in 1978. It goes up. So that means those tax cuts don't happen. Carter even vetoes his own spending programs. So the stuff that he went into office planning to do, he actually says no to once he's in office, because it actually increases inflation. So then he tries to stop inflation by reducing the money supply, less money for people to have, and raising interest rates. Well, this is also going to fail because there is less money out there for people to have. So people can't buy as much, and you're charging more interest. You're charging them more for the same things. So people just aren't buying, which leads to those high prices because businesses still need to make a profit. So basically, overall, he is a huge failure when it comes to the economy. All right, so maybe you'll have a better luck in the energy area. So we remember under Ford, there was an energy crisis. We were having problems with OPEC. So Carter's main domestic focus is the energy crisis and our dependence on foreign oil. So he creates a Department of Energy with Congress to really focus on our national energy problems. And he really has three programs that he asks the U.S. to follow. He wants us to conserve oil, use less of it, promote other energy sources, coal and renewable energy. And he wants people, individuals, to reduce their consumption of energy, use less energy. So those are the three things he wants us to do. Conserving oil, people aren't going to give up their cars, so that doesn't work out very well. Promoting the use of coal and renewable energy is somewhat successful, but because those don't work in a lot of the areas we use oil in, it's not terribly successful. And although people want to reduce their personal energy consumption, they also like the convenience of energy, electricity, cars, things like that. So they don't give them up. So again, essentially a failure. So the Department of Energy does not necessarily work and is not really successful in their goals. So then businesses and economists say, well, if we'll deregulate and not have as many rules and regulations on the oil industry, they can actually keep up with those oil prices that OPEC is doing. So the companies, the oil companies in the U.S. are being charged high amounts by OPEC. There are price controls in the U.S., which means they can't actually raise the prices at the same level and speed that OPEC is. So it's actually bankrupting the oil industry in the U.S. So because of that, you don't have as many oil companies who are able to provide oil So what they're asking Carter to do is get rid of those price controls. The businesses can raise prices for consumers, and that will actually stop the oil crisis. Well, he deregulates, but he adds a tax, which pretty much just defeats the purpose of deregulation, and it does not stop the oil crisis. And in 1979, we have a fuel shortage and even more economic crisis. As you can see, this is a line to the gas station in 1979. So people trying to get gas before it runs out. Gas was running out. You were limited in the amount of gas you could get. So it was really difficult for people during the 70s, especially the late 70s with Carter. We had some under Ford. It got worse under Carter. We really had a oil crisis. So overall, Carter's domestic programs fail. So inexperience, inability to work with Congress, whatever you want to say, the fault is his policies did not work. He didn't have a cohesive plan, he didn't have a way to get there, and he failed. So foreign issues, he actually was more clear in his foreign policy. He had America committed to human rights. Remember, he's talking about morality. Human rights are one of his big pushes. And we're going to see his foreign policies in action in both the Soviet Union and relationship with them and the Middle East. There are a couple different things in the Middle East. So we'll start with the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, unfair treatment of their political prisoners. He saw this as violations of human rights, so he would condemn the Soviet Union. Then, in 1979, the Soviet Union invades Afghanistan. So they are looking for more space. They're looking for access to water, oil. Carter actually reacts by an embargo and a boycott of the 1980 Olympics. So this ends détente, that easing of tensions. Obviously, we're not still okay with the Soviet Union. So here you can see the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. Maybe use a different color here. Went into Afghanistan. So we really see the Soviet Union pushing because they're attempting to get really a warm water port is their goal. At this point, Iran was actually friendly with the U.S., but that is going to change. But we see more and more tension with the Soviet Union in the late 70s under Carter. Then the Middle East. In the Middle East, one of Carter's most successful actions is going to be called the Camp David Accords. He actually negotiates a peace agreement between Israel and Egypt. So they've been at war since the late 1940s. Really right after World War II, they've been at war over Israel. And he gets the two countries to agree to a peace. Now, this is only Israel and Egypt, not the other Arab nations that were fighting Israel. So it does not increase American popularity with Arab countries, but it does increase Carter's image as a peacemaker and someone who cares about human rights. So that's important. So this is hugely successful for him. And here we have the leaders and Carter's the guy in the middle, at the Camp David Accords. So that's really successful, but then we're going to look at his least successful foreign policy action, the Iran hostage crisis. And if you have seen Argo, you've seen part of this, but not all of it. So Argo is actually based on this, but it is not on the entire hostage crisis. It's on the group that actually did not get taken hostage. The crisis is about the people who were still in the embassy and were taken hostage, just to make that clear. So the U.S. supported the Shah of Iran. The Shah of Iran is this guy right here. Here he is with his wife. He is a king. He gives us oil. He buffers us against the Soviet Union, if you remember from here. You see he's right up against the Soviet Union. So it's an ally of the U.S. that buffers us from the Soviet Union. But he's very unpopular in Iran because of the way he treats his citizens and because his views on the Islamic religion. He was not Islamic. Most of the country was, or is. So in January of 1979, he actually is overthrown and replaced with a religious leader, the Ayatollah Khomeini, who is this guy right over here. And you can kind of see very fundamentalist religious leader. So Shah's out, Khomeini is in. With that, that means they are hostile to the U.S. because we supported the previous leadership. And you can really tell, if we go back to this picture, They were wealthy, they were monarchs, and they lived like monarchs. So, in November of 1979, the rebels stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and took 52 hostages. Throughout the year, they threatened to kill them. They would not negotiate with Carter. Things were very bad. In April of 1980, we tried to rescue some of the hostages, or all of the hostages, and here you can see some of the pictures storming the building, the hostages. And the rescue attempt was a failure. In fact, there were helicopter malfunctions. American servicemen died before they even were able to get there. So this is a huge crisis. Carter continues to attempt to negotiate with the rebels until his very last day in office, which is January 20th, 1980. That is the day, his very last day in office, is when they release the hostages after 444 days as hostages, so well over a year. Finally, these 52 people were released, but not with Carter as president. He's on his way out, and we got a new guy coming in. I'll come back to that in a second. In 1980, Carter had failed so many areas, he is actually less popular than Nixon was during Watergate. And so the Iran hostage crisis was happening during the election, and Reagan becomes the new president. So even though Carter's the one that ended the crisis, Reagan gets the credit for it. So here we have the Carter years and pretty much everything he failed at. So it really gives you an idea that because of that, he obviously does not win a second term, and Reagan becomes our next president. And that's actually our next unit. So you don't have to worry about Reagan until at least next week.